For over 25 years, Princess Diana's brother, Charles Spencer, stayed silent. While the world speculated, while books were written and documentaries aired, he refused to speak publicly about the darkest chapters of his sister's life and death. But now, everything has changed. Charles Spencer has finally broken his silence, and what he revealed has left not only royal watchers, but the entire world completely stunned. "I can't stay quiet any longer," he confessed. Why did he wait decades to speak? What truth was too dangerous, too painful, or too explosive to share until now? His words have shattered the carefully crafted royal narrative. From the heartbreaking decisions made after Diana's death to the hidden battles no one saw, Spencer's revelations expose a side of the monarchy few dared to imagine. This isn't gossip. This isn't rumor. This is Diana's own brother pulling back the curtain on a story buried for far too long. And now that he's spoken, the question isn't why he stayed silent. It's, how will the royal family survive what he's just revealed? Stay with us, because this confession changes everything. The silence is over. Charles Spencer finally speaks. For over 25 years, Charles Spencer, the 9th Earl Spencer and beloved brother of Princess Diana, held his tongue. While the world speculated, while the palace maintained its cold silence, he chose dignity over drama. But now, that silence is shattered. In a rare and emotional revelation, Spencer has finally spoken out. His words aren't just personal reflections, they're a direct challenge to the heart of the monarchy itself. Why now? Why break decades of restraint? "There comes a point," Spencer said quietly, "when holding back feels like betrayal." It wasn't anger that pushed him to speak. It was truth. A truth too heavy to carry alone. Spencer has lived with the knowledge of what really happened behind palace doors after Diana's death. The decisions made, the lies told, and the pain inflicted, especially on two young boys left motherless. His statements reveal a man haunted, not just by the loss of his sister, but by a system that, in his words, protected itself before it protected Diana or her sons. This isn't just a story about the past, it's about accountability, about a brother who watched history get rewritten and finally decided the world deserved to hear what really happened. Because when Charles Spencer speaks, the monarchy listens, whether they want to or not. And it all traces back to one moment, the day the world said goodbye to Diana. Millions watched the grand funeral, but few knew the battle raging behind the scenes. A battle where Spencer stood alone, trying to shield his nephews from a decision he couldn't stop. What happened that day didn't just break hearts, it sparked a lifetime of regret. Let's go back to the funeral that changed the world. The funeral that changed the world. September 6, 1997. A day etched into history. Over 2.5 billion people around the globe watched as Princess Diana's coffin was carried through the streets of London. But behind the solemn ceremony, a painful decision had been forced upon her family, one that Charles Spencer never agreed to. William and Harry, just 15 and 12, were told to walk behind their mother's coffin. To the world, it looked like royal bravery, but to Spencer, it was something else entirely. "It was the cruelest thing I've ever witnessed," Spencer later revealed. He fought against it. He begged the palace to reconsider. He knew Diana would never have wanted her sons paraded through grief for the sake of appearances, But the decision had already been made. Royal image came first. As the boys walked through the streets, surrounded by cameras and mourners, Spencer walked beside them, feeling powerless. Every step haunted him. Was this honoring Diana or betraying her memory? The funeral wasn't just a farewell. It was a display carefully crafted by the institution. And for Spencer, it became the moment he realized just how far the monarchy would go to protect its image, even at the expense of 2 grieving children. Years later, the truth behind that heartbreaking walk came out. Spencer always believed the boys chose to walk. But he was wrong. He was misled by those who wanted to keep him quiet. And when Harry finally revealed the truth, that they never had a choice, it reopened wounds that never healed. What really happened behind closed doors? Let's uncover the real story behind the coffin walk. They lied to me. The real story behind the coffin walk. For years, Charles Spencer lived with a painful assumption that William and Harry had agreed to walk behind their mother's coffin. Palace officials assured him the boys want to do this. It was the only reason he didn't fight harder. But decades later, Harry confessed the truth. They never wanted to. They were given no choice. "I was misled," Spencer admitted, his voice heavy with regret. The revelation hit him like a second tragedy. Spencer, who had promised Diana he'd protect her sons, realized he'd been manipulated by a system determined to put royal duty before human compassion. Harry later described the experience as one of the hardest things I've ever done. A child forced into a global spectacle of grief because the palace needed to show a united front. Could Spencer have stopped it if he'd known the truth? It's a question that haunts him to this day. He was Diana's fiercest defender, but even he couldn't break through the royal machine. That moment, those few steps behind the coffin, became a symbol of everything wrong with how the monarchy handled Diana's death. And for Spencer, it became a lifelong reminder of how far the firm would go to protect itself. But Charles Spencer wasn't just a grieving brother. He was Diana's last line of defense. Even before that tragic day, he warned the palace, "Don't use the boys. Don't turn this into a royal display." But his words fell on deaf ears. The system was already in motion, and when Spencer realized he was outnumbered, he did the only thing he could. He stood up and became Diana's final defender. Diana's final defender. Charles Spencer wasn't just Diana's brother. He was her shield when no one else dared to stand up for her. Long before her death, he saw how the palace and media circled her like vultures. And when tragedy struck, he vowed to protect what she loved most, her sons. In the days after Diana's passing, Spencer confronted palace officials directly. "She would never have wanted this," he told them, referring to the public spectacle they were planning. He warned them not to use William and Harry as pawns in a royal narrative. But Spencer quickly realized he was alone in that fight. The royal machine was too powerful, too determined to maintain control over the public image. No amount of pleading could stop what had already been set in motion. Still, he didn't stay silent. At every opportunity, Spencer reminded anyone who would listen that Diana was more than just a princess. She was a mother, a sister, and a woman failed by the very institution meant to protect her. "I was there to defend her when she had no voice left," Spencer later said, and defend her he did. Even when outnumbered, even when ignored, Spencer carried Diana's legacy on his shoulders, refusing to let the world forget who she really was. The speech that stopped the nation. September 6, 1997. Westminster Abbey was filled with royalty, dignitaries, and a grieving nation. But when Charles Spencer stepped up to the podium, no one was prepared for what he was about to say. This wasn't a typical eulogy. Spencer didn't just mourn his sister, he called out those who failed her. Diana was the most hunted person of the modern age, he declared, his voice steady but sharp. It was a direct shot at both the media and the monarchy. In a room where protocol ruled and silence was expected, Spencer broke every unwritten rule. And then, something unheard of happened. Applause inside Westminster Abbey, a place where clapping during a funeral was almost unthinkable. But the people knew. They felt every word. Spencer's speech wasn't polished for royal approval. It was raw, real, and full of the frustration he had carried for years, watching his sister suffer under public and palace pressure. "I pledge that we, your blood family, will do all we can to protect your boys," he vowed that day. It was a promise that echoed far beyond the Abbey walls. In that moment, Charles Spencer became more than Diana's brother. He became her voice, and the monarchy had no choice but to listen. While Spencer spoke boldly inside Westminster Abbey, the royal family did something shocking. They stayed silent. No statements, no public grief, not even a flag at half-mast. As the streets of London filled with flowers and tears, the palace remained distant and cold. Why did the royals vanish during Britain's darkest hour? Let's uncover what really happened during the day the royals went silent. The day the royals went silent. As millions mourned Diana's death, the royal family disappeared behind the walls of Balmoral. No public address, no sign of solidarity. The flag above Buckingham Palace didn't even fly at half-mast. A decision that outraged the public. Crowds gathered outside the palace gates, demanding answers. But inside, there was only silence. "Where is the Queen?" newspapers asked. Britain wasn't just grieving. It felt abandoned by the very family meant to lead in times of sorrow. The royals claimed they were protecting William and Harry, keeping them shielded from the media storm. But to the public, it looked like indifference. The people's princess was gone, and the monarchy seemed frozen, unsure how to respond. Spencer, watching from afar, knew exactly what was happening. The palace wasn't built for emotional connection. It was built for control. And in this moment of national heartbreak, control was slipping through their fingers. It wasn't until public anger reached a boiling point that the Queen finally returned to London and addressed the nation. But for many, it was too little, too late. Diana's death didn't just expose personal tragedy. It revealed a royal family out of touch with the people they were meant to serve. While Britain searched for comfort, Charles Spencer faced his own personal nightmare, 7,000 miles away in South Africa. A single phone call shattered his world forever. First came the news of an accident, then the confirmation no brother ever wants to hear. But for Spencer, grief quickly turned to blame. Let's revisit that morning in South Africa, the call that changed him forever. That morning in South Africa, the call that changed Spencer forever. It was early morning in South Africa when Charles Spencer's phone rang. Half asleep, he answered, never expecting that his life was about to change forever. "Diana's been in an accident." Those were the first words. Minutes later came the second call. "She didn't make it." In that instant, Spencer's world collapsed. But as the shock set in, so did something else: anger. He didn't believe this was just a tragic accident. He knew exactly who to blame. "It wasn't fate that took my sister," Spencer later said. "It was the relentless pursuit, by the press, by the paparazzi, and by a system that failed her at every turn." As he boarded a plane back to London, Spencer wasn't just grieving. He was preparing for battle. He understood that Diana's death was the result of years of pressure, isolation, and being hunted like prey. But what he didn't know then was that this was only the beginning. The palace would soon take control of the narrative, and Spencer would find himself fighting to keep Diana's truth alive. That call in South Africa didn't just inform him of a loss. It lit a fire that still burns today. As Spencer flew home, his thoughts turned to two young boys who had just lost their mother. But William and Harry weren't comforted by family. They were left to grieve in silence, hidden away from a world desperate for answers. How did the palace handle their pain? The truth is heartbreaking. Let's uncover how Diana's sons were left grieving in the shadows. Diana's sons, grieving in the shadows. When William and Harry learned of their mother's death, they weren't surrounded by warmth or open arms. They were tucked away at Balmoral, far from the public eye, left to process unimaginable grief in silence. Harry, just 12 years old, kept asking the same question. Is she really gone? There were no clear answers, only the cold routine of royal life continuing around them. The palace's priority wasn't emotional support. It was control. Keep the boys hidden. Keep the image intact. While the world sobbed openly, the future heirs were expected to stay composed, to carry on as tradition dictated. Spencer later admitted that this isolation haunted him. He wanted to take the boys under his wing, away from the suffocating grip of royal expectations, but the system wouldn't allow it. They were trapped, Spencer reflected. Even in grief, they belonged to the institution first. The image of two boys walking behind their mother's coffin wasn't just heartbreaking. It was a symbol of how the monarchy prioritized duty over humanity. While Diana gave her sons love and freedom, the palace offered them silence and structure. And for Spencer, watching his nephews grieve alone became yet another reminder of how deeply the system had failed his sister. And now, her children. She didn't need the crown, Spencer's most powerful words. At Diana's funeral, amidst grief and royal tension, Charles Spencer delivered a line that would echo for decades. Diana needed no royal title to generate her magic. With those words, Spencer didn't just honor his sister. He exposed a painful truth. Diana's power didn't come from the monarchy. It came from her heart, her connection to the people, and her refusal to be shaped by royal expectations. Spencer's eulogy wasn't just a tribute, it was a public reckoning. He called out the media for hunting her, the palace for failing her, and the system that left her isolated when she needed support the most. That single sentence, simple yet devastating, stripped away the illusion that the crown gave Diana her influence. In reality, it was her compassion, vulnerability, and strength that made her the people's princess. For Spencer, it was vital to remind the world that Diana's legacy was far greater than any title she ever held or lost. They took her title, Spencer later said, but they could never take her spirit. It was a moment when, for once, someone inside those aristocratic walls spoke the truth everyone else was too afraid to say. And the monarchy felt the sting. But Spencer's speech wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of a battle he never asked for. He promised to protect William and Harry, but the royal machine was stronger than even he could fight. As years passed, Spencer watched the system tighten its grip on his nephews. He couldn't pull them out, but he never stopped trying. Let's uncover the truth behind the battle that never ended. The battle that never ended. When Charles Spencer vowed to protect Diana's sons, he meant every word. But even with his title and influence, he soon realized he was facing an unstoppable force, the royal institution. They were already too deep in it, Spencer later confessed. William and Harry weren't just Diana's boys anymore. They were heirs to a system that demanded loyalty, silence, and sacrifice. Spencer tried to stay close, offering guidance where he could. But every decision about the boys' futures was controlled by palace officials. Schooling, public appearances, even their grief. It was all managed by the firm. Over time, Spencer saw the same patterns that destroyed his sister repeating themselves. The relentless media attention, the pressure to conform, the emotional suppression disguised as royal duty. He fought where he could, spoke out when allowed, but deep down he knew this was a battle he couldn't win. "I could protect their memory of Diana," he said, "but I couldn't protect them from the crown." Despite the odds, Spencer never stopped defending his sister's legacy or reminding the world of what had been lost. Not just in Diana, but in the freedom her sons would never truly have. As Spencer watched history repeat itself, one truth became clearer. Diana was never truly accepted by the institution she married into. Loved by the people, but sidelined by the palace, she became a symbol of everything the monarchy feared. Spencer knew it, and he never forgot it. Let's reveal how, in his eyes, Diana's tragic story was always a case of her legacy versus the institution. Diana's legacy versus the institution. Diana was the shining light the monarchy didn't know how to handle. She brought warmth, emotion, and humanity to an institution built on cold tradition. And for that, Charles Spencer believed she was punished. The moment she stopped being useful to them, they discarded her, Spencer once said, bitterly reflecting on his sister's treatment after her divorce from Prince Charles. While the public adored Diana, the palace viewed her as a threat, a woman who spoke too openly, cared too deeply, and connected too easily with ordinary people. Spencer saw firsthand how Diana was left vulnerable, stripped of her HRH title, isolated, and exposed to a media frenzy that the palace did little to stop. In his eyes, her death wasn't just a tragic accident, it was the final failure of every system meant to protect her. She didn't die because she was reckless, Spencer insisted. She died because the institution let her face the storm alone. For Spencer, Diana's legacy was a reminder of what the monarchy could never control, a royal who belonged to the people, not the palace. And that legacy still casts a long shadow over the crown today. Years later, Spencer saw a familiar story unfolding, this time with Harry. When Meghan entered his life, the same pressures that once crushed Diana resurfaced. But Harry did what his mother never could. He escaped. And Spencer understood better than anyone why he had to go. Let's explore how Spencer watched history repeat itself in Harry's escape from the royal machine. History repeats. Harry's escape. When Prince Harry and Meghan Markle stepped back from royal duties, the world was divided. But Charles Spencer wasn't. He saw exactly what Harry was doing, breaking free from the same system that destroyed his mother. "How could I blame him?" Spencer reportedly said in private conversations. He knew Harry's decision wasn't rebellion. It was survival. As Meghan faced relentless media attacks and palace indifference, Harry recognized the signs. Diana had been hounded, unheard, and unprotected. He wasn't about to let history claim his wife and children too. Spencer watched as Harry chose a different path, one his mother never had the chance to take. Leaving the royal fold wasn't a betrayal of duty, it was a defense of family. And unlike the critics within the palace walls, Spencer never condemned Harry's choice. He understood that sometimes loyalty to loved ones must come before loyalty to the crown. Harry did what Diana couldn't, Spencer later reflected. He saved his family. For Spencer, Harry's escape was both heartbreaking and hopeful, a painful reminder of the past, but also proof that Diana's legacy lived on in her youngest son's courage. Now, with decades of truth finally spoken and the royal image more fragile than ever, one question remains: how much truth can the crown survive? Charles Spencer's honesty stands in stark contrast to royal silence. And as the world listens more closely than ever before, Diana's story refuses to fade. Let's face the final question. Will the truth ever be too much for the monarchy to handle? Will the truth ever be too much for the crown? For over 2 decades, Charles Spencer has carried the weight of his sister's legacy, speaking truths the palace wished would stay buried. But now, those truths are louder than ever. Every word Spencer has shared exposes a royal family more focused on survival than compassion. His honesty isn't just a personal mission, it's a mirror held up to the monarchy. The truth doesn't die in silence, Spencer said recently. It waits, and when it comes out, it changes everything. Diana's story didn't end in that Paris tunnel. It lives on in every revelation, every interview, every time Spencer refuses to let the world forget how she was treated. The monarchy may prefer tradition and discretion, but Spencer's voice, and the voices of those like Harry, are rewriting the narrative. Charles Spencer's words have echoed across the world, raw, honest, and impossible to ignore. After decades of silence, he's finally revealed what so many suspected but never truly knew. He spoke not out of revenge, but out of duty. A duty to his sister, to his nephews, and to the truth. Diana deserved better, he said simply. And in those 3 words, he captured a sentiment shared by millions. Spencer's revelations uncovered the painful reality behind palace walls, the decisions that betrayed Diana, the pressures that crushed her spirit, and the system that left her sons to grieve alone. But this isn't just a history lesson. His words are a warning, a reminder that beneath the royal glitter lies a machine designed to protect itself at any cost, even if it means sacrificing those within it. The world is listening now. More than ever before, people are questioning the institution that once seemed untouchable. Spencer's honesty has reignited a conversation the monarchy hoped was long buried. How will the palace respond? Will they continue their tradition of silence, or will they finally acknowledge the truths they've tried so hard to hide? One thing is clear: there's no turning back. Charles Spencer has spoken, and his words can't be undone. Diana's story didn't end in 1997. It lives on in every revelation, every memory, and every challenge to the system that failed her. And as long as voices like Spencer's remain loud, the monarchy will never be able to silence the legacy of the people's princess. This isn't just the end of silence. It's the beginning of accountability. Stay tuned, because the story of Diana and the truth behind the crown is far from over.